The laundry sits in the dryer for 2 days. Your laptop is open. And somewhere in your notes, there's a plan that could actually change your life. So why is it that some of the most ambitious people can also be the most brutal procrastinators? You open the laptop like you're about to become someone new, then spend 20 minutes adjusting a tab, checking one message, moving the mouse, pretending the day hasn't already started judging you. That's what makes it worse. You're not empty of desire, you're full of it. You can picture the better version of your future with almost painful detail, then still avoid the one move that would make the picture real. I've done that bargain too, wanting a bigger life while negotiating with the smallest possible action. Maybe you're not addicted to laziness. Maybe you're addicted to the version of yourself that has not been tested yet. And that is where the real discomfort begins. There is a private comfort in imagining your future before anyone can measure it. The notebook is clean. The idea is sharp. The room is quiet enough for you to believe that tomorrow, something different will begin. You can see the business, the body, the book, the degree, the move. The version of yourself who finally has structure and confidence and a reason to respect the mirror again. Then morning comes. The coffee gets cold. The first task looks smaller and uglier than the dream. Not inspiring, not cinematic. Just a blank document, an unpaid invoice, a gym bag by the door, a messy desktop, a calendar asking for one honest hour. And suddenly, the ambition that felt powerful in your head starts to feel like pressure in your chest. This is where the pattern gets misread. From the outside, it looks like laziness. From the inside, it may be a way of protecting the dream from contact with reality. As long as the goal stays in your imagination, it can remain perfect. No rejection. No awkward beginning. No evidence that you are not as naturally gifted as you hoped. The fantasy does not ask you to be clumsy. The first step does. Psychologists often talk about avoidance learning, when avoiding something gives immediate relief. The brain learns to repeat the avoidance. You don't finish the application, and for a moment, the anxiety drops. You don't start the project, and for a moment, you don't have to face the gap between your standards and your current skill. Relief becomes the reward. I've watched people call that peace. I have called it peace myself. But it was not peace. It was a temporary silence bought with tomorrow's stress. The more painful truth is this: sometimes you do not fear the dream failing. You fear the dream becoming ordinary. You fear watching the golden version in your head turn into dull mornings, rejected emails, and one embarrassing first attempt. Ambition stays clean when it stays untouched. Work makes it real, and real things can disappoint you. So the first reframe is small but honest. Your resistance may not prove you don't care. It may prove you care in a way your nervous system hasn't learned how to carry yet. But if the dream remains safer than the work, the dream becomes a hiding place. And once potential becomes your hiding place, every ordinary task starts to feel like an attack. There's a strange little lie that happens right before avoidance. It usually sounds reasonable. I'll do it later, not never. Later is the softest word a stuck person can use because it lets you keep your ambition without paying for it today. You close the laptop. You put the shoes back in the closet. You leave the email unread at the top of the inbox. The room doesn't explode. Nobody comes through the door with a clipboard. For a few minutes you feel free. That feeling is the trap. Temporal discounting is the psychological tendency to value immediate comfort more than future reward. The future benefit may be huge, but the present discomfort is loud. A healthier body 6 months from now is abstract. The couch tonight is real. A finished portfolio next year is abstract. The phone in your hand is real. Your brain is not always asking, "What is best for my life?" Sometimes it is asking, "What can reduce discomfort in the next 30 seconds?" That doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But unmanaged humanity can become a very expensive habit. The ambitious part of you speaks in years, the avoidant part of you speaks in minutes. And most days, minutes win, because minutes have body weight. You can feel boredom. You can feel embarrassment. You can feel the dry throat before making a call. You cannot feel the future version of yourself thanking you. Not yet. So you keep sending the invoice forward. Tomorrow will handle the deadline. Monday will become disciplined. Next month will become serious. Your future self becomes the overworked employee of your present moods, always cleaning up what you refused to face when it was still small. How many times have you handed tomorrow the mess you were too afraid to touch today? But your future self is not a storage unit for every fear you refuse to unpack today. After enough borrowing, the future stops feeling like a promise and starts feeling like someone you keep lying to. I say that carefully because shame won't fix this. Shame usually makes the loop worse. You feel behind, so you avoid the evidence. You avoid the evidence, so you fall further behind. Then the ambition becomes heavier because now it has guilt attached to it. A better turn is to ask a sharper question. What discomfort am I asking my future self to absorb because I refuse to feel a smaller discomfort now? That question is not motivational, it is surgical. Maybe it is the discomfort of making a clumsy phone call. Maybe it is 10 minutes of boredom. Maybe it is opening the bank app and seeing the number plainly. Maybe it is admitting the plan is still only a plan because you keep protecting your mood more than your direction. The battle is not between ambition and laziness. It is between immediate relief and delayed self-respect. Once you see that, the next layer becomes harder to ignore. Sometimes the task itself is not the threat. Your own standard is. Perfectionism does not always look polished. Sometimes it looks like a person sitting on the edge of the bed at noon, phone in hand, feeling guilty, while an untouched project waits on the desk like a silent accusation. No color-coded planner, no elegant anxiety, just paralysis in old sweatpants. That's the version people miss. When you are lazy but ambitious, you may not be avoiding effort. You may be avoiding bad effort, awkward effort, beginner effort, the ugly first draft, the weak first workout, the shaky first sales call, the version of the work that proves you are not yet who you imagined you would be. Perfectionism often hides inside procrastination because both can protect the same thing: identity. If you never fully try, you never have to find out where you truly stand. You can still tell yourself, "I could be great if I really focused." That sentence is comforting because it preserves your potential, but it also traps you because potential becomes more important than progress. The laptop fan runs too loudly. The cursor blinks. You write one sentence, hate it, delete it, check your messages, then tell yourself you work better under pressure. Maybe you do, sometimes. But sometimes, pressure is just the only force strong enough to overpower the fear of producing something imperfect. There's a psychological name for the kind of self-trust you build by doing hard things badly at first. Albert Bandura called it self-efficacy. It is not just confidence. It is the belief that your actions can produce a result. And that belief grows mostly through doing, not fantasizing. Every small completed action tells your brain, I can affect reality. Every avoided action tells it, reality is too dangerous to touch. I've had to learn that done badly is not a moral failure. It is often the doorway. A clumsy beginning is not evidence that you are fake. It is evidence that you have finally left the fantasy stage. Here is the part that stings. Some people would rather remain an unrealized genius than become a visible beginner. The unrealized genius still feels special. The beginner has to be humbled. The beginner has to ask basic questions. The beginner has to survive being average for a while. And at some point, it becomes painful to admit that the people passing you are not always smarter than you. Some of them are simply more willing to be ordinary every day. That sentence can feel like a slap, but it can also set you free. Because the behavioral reframe is not lower your standards in the lazy sense. It is change what the standard measures. Instead of measuring whether the work proves you are talented, measure whether the work proves you are willing to be honest. One rough paragraph, one imperfect rep, one uncomfortable application. That is not small. That is identity changing in public. When you start letting yourself be seen in the unfinished stage, you run into another hidden issue. Ambition can become a way to feel important without making daily choices humble enough to build anything. Ambition has a mood. People don't talk about that enough. Planning can feel exciting. Watching videos about success can feel exciting. Imagining the comeback, the transformation, the moment people finally understand your value. There's a charge in that. Your posture changes. Your mind speeds up. For a little while, you feel connected to a bigger life. Then the video ends. The dishes are still in the sink. The document is still blank. The bank account is still ordinary. The inbox still has the same ugly little demand sitting there. And because reality doesn't match the emotional high, you go looking for the high again. Another plan, another app, another lecture, another late-night promise to yourself. This is how ambition becomes emotional entertainment. Not because the dream is false, but because the feeling of wanting starts replacing the act of building. In habit psychology, a cue leads to a routine, and the routine gives a reward. For some ambitious avoiders, the cue is dissatisfaction. You feel behind, ashamed, restless, or underused. The routine is not action. It is stimulation about action. You consume advice. Imagine a new identity. Maybe rearrange your schedule. The reward is temporary hope. But hope is not traction. A vision board can be useful. A plan can be useful. A quote can wake something up in you. But if the ritual keeps ending before the boring part begins, it becomes a sedative with inspirational packaging. I remember realizing that I could spend an entire evening learning how to improve my life and still avoid the one email that would actually improve it. That kind of honesty stings. It should, because the body often knows when ambition has become performance. You feel wired but not grounded, inspired but not accountable, full of ideas but strangely untouched by discipline. The room gets darker, the phone battery drops, and you still haven't done the thing. You are not resting. You are reheating the feeling of becoming. The small turn is to separate motivation from initiation. Motivation is allowed to be absent. Initiation is allowed to be tiny. Open the document and title it. Put the shoes by the door. Send the ugly first message. Work for 7 honest minutes before you decide what the day means. That sounds almost insulting when your dream is huge. But huge dreams often fail because the first step feels too small to respect. So you keep waiting for a step that feels worthy of your ambition. Meanwhile, the life you want is built out of steps your ego finds boring. The boredom you avoid may be the very place where your character is being asked to form. Not your brand, not your fantasy, your character, the private part of you that keeps promises when there is no applause. And once becoming feels better than building, you can waste years feeling close to a life you never actually touch. And maybe that is why potential becomes so addictive. It lets you feel close to greatness without asking you to be measured by the day in front of you. Potential is warm. Reality is cold. Potential says you could still be anything. Reality asks, what did you actually do today? Potential lets you feel gifted without being tested. Reality puts timestamps on your choices. It shows the missed workout, the half-finished course, the message never sent. The business idea still trapped in a folder named New Plan. For people who are lazy but ambitious, potential can become a private drug. Quietly intoxicating. You can live off the idea that there is more in you, and there may be. But more in you becomes a hiding place if it never becomes more through you. Cognitive dissonance helps explain the discomfort. When your self-image says, I'm ambitious, but your behavior says, I keep avoiding. Your mind has to reduce the tension somehow. One way is action, another way is explanation. I'm just tired. I haven't found the right system. I work best when I'm inspired. Some explanations are true sometimes. But when they repeat for years, they become legal defense for a life you are not living. The cruel part is that you may not fear failure as much as you fear losing the fantasy that success would be easy if you finally tried. Full effort removes your favorite excuse. Once you truly show up, the outcome can speak. That is terrifying. A cold steering wheel in the morning, a lunch break spent staring at a course you paid for but barely opened. A quiet envy when someone less talented passes you because they were consistent. These moments burn because they expose something ambition alone cannot cover. I remember the ugly feeling of watching someone less gifted move past me. Not because they were brilliant, but because they kept showing up while I kept protecting my story. And there is another confession under that envy. If someone less gifted can pass you through repetition, then maybe your gift was never enough by itself. Maybe your potential was not a crown. Maybe it was just an unpaid bill. And if that hurts to hear, it does not mean you are hopeless. It may mean the honest part of you is finally awake, because potential does not need worship. It needs spending, time, repetition, feedback, embarrassment, revision. The unromantic stuff. Potential is raw material, not identity. It does not become respectable until it is used. I don't trust the version of ambition that only feels alive in private. Real ambition eventually asks to become accountable. Not to everyone, not on social media, but to a calendar, a deadline, a body, a bank statement, a finished page, a small promise kept when nobody claps. So the reframe is this: reality is not only a verdict, it is also a workshop. It shows you what needs training. It reveals where the plan is weak. It gives you information fantasy cannot provide. If you can survive that information without turning it into shame, you can finally start becoming real. And once becoming real matters more than feeling impressive, you arrive at the deeper turning point. What would you do today if you stopped needing the action to prove you were special first. Your life changes when you stop waiting to feel like the person and start behaving your way into them. A lot of people think disciplined people wake up feeling clean and certain, like their brains are made of steel and their mornings come with background music. Maybe some do. Most don't. Many disciplined people simply have a different agreement with discomfort. They don't treat every bad feeling as a stop sign. That may be the central difference. The lazy but ambitious person often waits for emotional permission, the right mood, the right energy, the right confidence, the right mental weather. But life rarely hands you perfect weather. It hands you a Tuesday, a headache behind the forehead, a cluttered kitchen counter, a calendar reminder you resent, a body that wants comfort and a future that wants evidence. Discipline is not the absence of resistance. It is the decision not to let resistance become the manager. This connects to emotional regulation. When a task brings up boredom, fear, self-doubt, or irritation, the question becomes, can you stay with that feeling long enough to act anyway? Not forever, not heroically, just long enough to begin. The first few minutes often matter more than the mood you brought into them. I have learned not to negotiate with the first wave of resistance. That wave is a terrible advisor. It wants relief, not truth. It will make laziness sound intelligent, fatigue sound permanent, and avoidance sound like self-care. Sometimes rest is real, but sometimes I need rest is just fear wearing soft clothes. A practical turn is to make the first action so concrete that your emotions don't get to debate it. Call it the 7-minute beginning. Not a life overhaul, not a new identity, just 7 minutes where you let the action begin before your mood gets a vote. Not get my life together. Put the notebook on the table. Not become fit. Fill the water bottle and put on the shoes. Not build a career. Open the file and work until the timer ends. Specific actions reduce the fog because they give the body a door. And yes, it will still feel uncomfortable. That's the point. You are not trying to create a life with no discomfort. You are trying to stop choosing the kind that makes you smaller. Avoidance has discomfort too. It just arrives later, with interest. The honest question becomes, which pain are you willing to respect? The clean pain of effort or the stale pain of knowing you keep abandoning yourself? When ambition meets discomfort and stays anyway, something changes. Not instantly, not dramatically, but the self begins to believe again. You become less impressed by your own intentions and more steadied by your own follow-through. That does not mean becoming a productivity machine. It means becoming someone you can trust in small rooms, on plain days, when no one is inspired and nothing feels special. The gap between you and the life you want is not mystical. Sometimes it is 7 avoided mornings stacked on top of each other. Sometimes it is one honest morning repeated until your identity has no choice but to catch up. Maybe laziness was never the real identity. Maybe it was the old method. The real question is whether you are ready to stop protecting the dream and start building a life that can hold it. Maybe tonight the laptop is still open. Maybe the laundry is still sitting there. Maybe nothing dramatic changes after this except one thing. You stop calling yourself lazy long enough to tell the truth. You have been ambitious, but part of you may have been using ambition as a beautiful room to hide in, where the future stays untouched and the present never gets to ask for proof. I think ambition becomes real the moment it survives contact with ordinary effort. One dull morning, one honest page, one uncomfortable start. You don't have to become a different person overnight. You just have to stop storing today's courage inside tomorrow. Put one piece of laundry away. Open the file for 7 minutes. Let today become the place where courage actually lands. Not because you hate yourself into discipline, but because you respect yourself enough to stop disappearing. Write this down. I will stop hiding inside my potential.